The moment my boss put me on speaker and said, "It's over," something inside me didn't break. It just went quiet. Not the dramatic kind of quiet you see in movies. More like the silence you hear when you step outside after a storm, and the world hasn't realized yet that something has been destroyed. I remember staring at my phone, listening to the muffled laughter in the background and thinking, he really did this for a joke? A joke about firing me. A joke loud enough for the whole office to enjoy. I wasn't even at work. I was in my kitchen, halfway through reheating last night's leftovers, when his name flashed on my screen. I thought something urgent happened. A client issue, a deadline, something real. Instead, the first thing I heard was a room full of people trying and failing to stifle their laughter. Then his voice. Loud, confident, performative. "It's over. Pack your things." Someone in the background snorted. Someone else whispered, "No way, dude. Say it again." He cleared his throat theatrically. "Did you hear me? You're done here, man." I stood there with the microwave humming behind me, trying to understand what I was supposed to say. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was something stranger. A cold, slow realization that he didn't call because he was angry. He didn't call because of work. He called because I was the easiest one to humiliate. I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. "Are you finished?" I said. My voice wasn't shaking. If anything, it was disappointingly calm. More laughter. Someone clapped. He loved that part. He lived for that attention. "Relax," he finally said, voice dripping with the fake warmth he reserved for moments when HR might be listening. "It was a joke. You're too serious, man. Lighten up." Then he hung up, just like that. No explanation, no apology, nothing. My hands weren't shaking afterward. My breathing wasn't shaky either. But something in my chest felt off, like a thread that had been pulled just enough to loosen the whole seam. I finished heating my food, sat at my table, and realized I couldn't taste a single thing. I wasn't even angry yet. Anger would have meant I cared. What I felt was deeper, a kind of internal shift, a small voice saying, "This isn't a joke to them. This is who you are to them." When I returned to the office the next morning, everything looked normal. That fluorescent, tired kind of normal. Colleagues typing, keyboards clicking, coffee machines wheezing, and then that slight pause. The way people's eyes lingered a second too long when I walked in. The look you give someone after you've seen a video they haven't watched yet. He spotted me from his glass-walled office and grinned like we were old friends sharing a private joke. "There he is," he called out, loud enough for the surrounding desks to hear. "Back from the dead." More chuckles. Even people who liked me smiled nervously, not because it was funny, but because not laughing made you noticeable. In this office, noticeable was dangerous. I took my seat, logged in, pretended everything was fine. I was good at pretending. Years of practice. He eventually came over, leaning on my desk like a coach, checking on his star player. "Hey, you didn't get mad yesterday, right? Come on, it was funny." I didn't smile. "Was it?" He blinked, surprised I didn't play along. He wasn't used to resistance, even mild. "It's office humor," he said. "You know how it is. Office humor." That was the term he used when he mocked people's clothes, their voices, their mistakes, or, apparently, their livelihood. And every time he made a joke, he waited for that ripple of nervous laughter, like he needed the room to bless his cruelty to keep it going. He straightened, slapped my desk twice, and walked off, like nothing happened. But something did happen. Not for him, for me. Around lunchtime, one of the quieter analysts from 2 rows down slipped by my desk. He didn't stop, didn't make eye contact, just whispered, "Sorry about yesterday," and kept walking. Like he was afraid someone might have heard him being human. It hit harder than I expected. That night, I sat in my car outside the building after everyone left. The parking lot lights buzzed. My reflection in the windshield looked like someone I barely recognized. Tired, older than I should be, and holding on to a job that kept shrinking me piece by piece. I thought about quitting. I even imagined writing a simple 2-line resignation and leaving it on his desk. But that would have been too easy for him. He would have laughed. He would have bragged about it for weeks. And that silence inside me, the one that replaced anger, whispered something else. You don't leave. Not yet. You watch. You listen. You wait. When I went home that night, I opened a blank document. No plan, no revenge, just a list. A list of moments I had swallowed because I didn't want to cause problems. Things I told myself weren't worth the trouble. Little humiliations I pretended not to notice. That list grew faster than I expected. By the time I closed the laptop, the silence inside me finally settled into something solid, something steady. Not rage, direction. The joke was over, but I wasn't. I thought keeping my head down would make things settle. That maybe he'd get bored and move on to someone else. But the thing about people like him is simple. Once they know you won't bite, they start checking how much you can swallow. The next morning, I found a sticky note on my monitor. Client report, redo. You messed up the margins. Margins. The numbers were fine. The analysis was fine. He just needed a reason to remind me who the joke belonged to. I redid it anyway, not because he was right, but because I wanted the paper trail neat and clean. When I put the new report on his desk, he didn't even look up. Good, he said. Try not to screw up next time. I didn't answer. That bothered him. A lot more than a sarcastic comeback would have. He looked up, expecting me to laugh it off, soften the moment. I didn't. Later that day, he accidentally CC'd the entire department on an email where he called my draft sloppy work. It wasn't sloppy. Everyone knew it wasn't sloppy. But silence in an office is a powerful thing. When no one defends you, the insult lands twice. People avoided eye contact in the hallway. Not because they believed him, but because they didn't want to become the next punchline. And that was just the beginning. He started assigning me tasks at 5:58 p.m. with deadlines first thing tomorrow. He began popping up behind me to comment on my screen, loud enough for people around to hear. Wow, that's your idea of efficiency. Or, man, if you were any slower, we'd need 2 calendars. Every time someone nearby forced a laugh. Forced, because the sound came a second too late. One afternoon, a junior analyst dropped his files. Papers scattered everywhere. Before I could help, my boss appeared behind him and said, loud and proud, "Careful, don't turn into him." He pointed at me. The analyst froze. I froze. Everything inside me tightened, then compressed into something sharp. He waited for me to laugh. When I didn't, he leaned in. "Relax, man. It's humor." "Is it?" I asked quietly. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. That was my micro-catharsis. Small, sharp, quiet. His eyes flickered just for a moment, like he'd seen the edge of something he didn't expect. But instead of stopping, he escalated. The next week, he tried to pin a client's complaint on me, except the timestamp on the email showed he'd handled the task himself. When I pointed it out, calmly without raising my voice, he got red. Not from embarrassment, from fear that someone else might hear it. That night, I added the incident to my growing document, then another, and another. Late one evening, when most of the office had already left, I heard footsteps behind me. I assumed it was him, ready with another sarcastic comment, but it wasn't. It was the CFO. He leaned on the divider and looked at my screen for a moment. "You're always the last to leave." I shrugged. "Deadlines." He didn't smile, didn't joke. "I've been watching the numbers," he said. "Your account retention rates are higher than the entire department combined." I didn't know what to say. He continued, lowering his voice. "And I've been watching something else, too." My chest tightened. "The patterns," he said. "The dynamic." He didn't need to specify. In places like this, everyone knows who the storm is. Everyone knows who carries the umbrella for the team. They just pretend not to. He tapped his knuckles lightly on my desk. "Keep doing what you're doing. Don't burn yourself out." That was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd received in months. maybe years. But the real shift happened 2 days later. A major client, the kind that paid for half our department's bonuses, requested a sudden meeting. They specifically asked for me, not the department, not my boss. Me. My boss hated that. He insisted on sitting in for alignment, but spent the whole meeting pretending to understand the numbers I had prepared. He interrupted me twice, both times incorrectly. When the call ended, he pulled me into a conference room. What the hell was that? What? I asked. You're making me look bad. I'm not trying to. You don't have to try, he snapped, his face twisted into this frustrated, high-pitched anger, the kind that happens when someone who's always been the hero suddenly realizes the audience is looking somewhere else. He jabbed a finger at my chest. You think you're smarter than me? No, I said quietly. I think you're scared. He froze. You could almost hear the click. That moment when someone sees you differently for the first time. Like he suddenly realized the person he'd been stepping on could stand up if he chose to. He didn't show up to work the next morning. Instead, he sent a long email up the chain claiming I'd been missing deadlines, failing clients, and creating hostility within the team. He framed everything perfectly. The tone, the timing, the language. He thought he'd picked the right moment, when upper management was stressed about quarterly numbers and looking for a scapegoat. He pressed send. And for the first time since that speakerphone joke, I felt something close to anger. Not the wild kind, the precise kind. Focused, steady. He didn't know something important. I had every email, every timestamp, every version of every report, every correction, every time he tried to shift blame, every piece of data he'd hoped no one would check. And I knew something else too. The CFO was already watching. I didn't even know the investigation had started. No email, no warning, just a calendar invite from HR titled Performance Review Clarification. That word, clarification, hides more fear in it than termination ever could. Clarification means someone already said something about you. Clarification means someone tried to write the story before you even opened your mouth. I walked into the small conference room to find 2 HR reps and the CFO already seated. My boss wasn't there. The CFO nodded at the empty chair across from them. Take a seat. One of the HR reps opened a folder. We received a complaint regarding your performance and conduct. I didn't panic. I didn't sweat. If anything, I felt an eerie sense of calm. The kind you get when you know every card in the deck is stacked in a certain direction, and it isn't toward you. What kind of complaint? I asked. The HR rep slid a printed email toward me. His email? 3 paragraphs outlining how I'd allegedly sabotaged deadlines, mishandled clients, and created a negative work environment. I scanned it, slowly, and then, without a word, I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder. Printed, organized, tabbed, time-stamped. I didn't slam it on the table. I didn't make a scene. I simply placed it there. Before we continue, I said, I think these might help with context. The CFO leaned forward first. HR followed. When they saw the volume, neatly sorted digital trails, forwarded emails, revision history logs, client responses, everything my boss assumed I'd never track, their expression shifted. What exactly are we looking at? The HR rep asked. A year, I said, of cleaning up problems he claimed were mine. The CFO opened the first tabbed section. 2 minutes in, he stopped reading and exhaled through his nose, the kind of exhale that says, "This is worse than we thought." HR went quiet, very quiet, the kind of quiet that means someone in that room already knows this meeting isn't about me anymore. They asked me questions, dates, times, responsibilities. I answered plainly. No emotion, no dramatics. Every answer linked directly to a document. No contradictions, no shaky details. It took 30 minutes for the HR rep to finally ask the question they'd been trying to avoid. Why didn't you report this sooner? Because reporting things early doesn't help people like me. Because people who keep the company afloat quietly don't get believed until the damage is visible. Because every complaint becomes a personality mismatch, while the golden boys get protected. But I didn't say any of that. Because, I answered, I thought I could just keep doing my job. The CFO closed the folder. You did more than your job. There was something in his tone, not warmth, not sympathy, but respect. Real, earned respect. It wasn't loud, but it hit harder than any apology could have. They released me back to my desk while they reviewed the material. I already knew what that meant. They weren't reviewing me anymore. They were preparing for what happened next. I hadn't even sat down when my boss stormed out of his office, face flushed, jaw tight, eyes darting everywhere. He must have seen the meeting invite go out. He must have assumed it went well for him. He pointed at me like a man who just remembered he left the stove on. What did you tell them? Everything, I said. He laughed, a thin, shaky laugh. You think anyone believes you over me? I don't think, I said. I have proof. Something in him cracked, right there. Not loud, not dramatic, just a tiny fracture in confidence, the kind that spreads fast when someone built their entire identity on being untouchable. He disappeared into his office, slammed the door. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. By noon, the CFO requested access to the department's shared drive. By 1, HR walked out of my boss's office carrying a box of files. Not his things, evidence. The office felt different, electric, buzzing like everyone sensed a fire burning behind the walls, but didn't know where the smoke was coming from. At 3:17 p.m., I got another email. Please join us in conference room B. Urgent. My boss wasn't in the room this time either, but his director was, and his director looked like a man who'd just been handed a grenade with the pin halfway pulled. The director spoke first. We found inconsistencies in your supervisor's documentation, quite serious ones. He didn't meet my eyes. He didn't have to. The CFO took over. I'm going to be direct. A large portion of the department's output over the last year was completed by you, independently. That wasn't a question. It was a statement. And, he continued, several misleading reports were submitted under your supervisor's name that contradict your timestamps. Misleading. Corporate for dishonest. Corporate for fired with cause. You're not under review anymore, he said. Your supervisor is. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. My micro-catharsis. Not joy, not triumph. Just this steady, powerful clarity. He thought he could bury me with lies. Instead, he dug his own grave. I walked out of that room feeling taller, not because they praised me, but because they finally saw the truth I'd been carrying alone. At 5:08 p.m., security walked into the office. They didn't say who they were there for. They didn't need to. My boss's door opened. He tried to argue, hands waving, voice rising, words getting stuck in a panic he couldn't hide anymore. But when security stands behind you, the room stops listening. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in a long time, the office wasn't laughing. Imagine that. The man who spent years turning people into punchlines, now leaving in silence, and the silence felt good. When he was gone, the office didn't celebrate. There were no whispered cheers, no gossiping circles forming near the coffee machine. Everyone just exhaled, like they had been holding their breath for years without realizing it. People typed softer, chairs stopped squeaking, even the fluorescent lights felt less harsh. It was the kind of calm that shows up only after a storm finally admits defeat. For the first time in months, no one avoided my eyes when I walked past. A few nodded. One person murmured a quiet, "Good morning," like it was an apology for all the times they stayed silent. I didn't need anything from them, not validation, not praise. The room itself already felt different, and that was enough. At noon, the CFO sent a short message. Meet me at 1 in my office. No subject line, no details. I expected a debrief, maybe a warning, maybe instructions to keep the investigation confidential. What I didn't expect was the director sitting beside him, hands folded, expression calm but focused. The CFO didn't waste time. "We need an interim department lead," he said, "effective immediately." I blinked. "Who?" "You," he answered, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I didn't say anything at all. I just sat there while the director slid a binder across the table. Responsibilities, structure, transition notes. "You've been doing the work already," the director said. "This just makes it official." I wasn't excited. I wasn't overwhelmed. I didn't feel proud or victorious. What I felt was steady, as if something in me had finally fallen into its rightful place. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I took the binder. "I'll keep the department stable," I said. "That's exactly why we chose you," the CFO replied. The rest of the meeting was a blur of logistics, temporary authority, client communication rules, audit timelines. But the underlying message was clear. They trusted me more than they ever trusted him. When I walked out of the office with the binder tucked under my arm, I could feel unfamiliar weight behind me. Respect. Real, quiet respect. It followed me back to my desk like a shadow, with good intentions. For the first time, people didn't laugh when I passed by. They listened. Later that afternoon, while the office hum settled into its new rhythm, I felt someone hovering by my desk. When I looked up, I expected HR or the CFO again. It was him. My former boss stood there, eyes tired, hair messy, wearing the same jacket he'd been escorted out with. He shouldn't have been in the building, but the side entrance sometimes malfunctions, and he knew that better than anyone. For a moment, we just stared at each other. "You got me fired," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "You got you fired." He scoffed. "Come on, you think you're better than me now?" "No," I said calmly, "just not worse." He blinked, thrown off by how ordinary my voice sounded. I wasn't mocking him. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. And that bothered him more than any insult could have. "I want to talk," he said. "Clear the air." "There's nothing to clear." "You could have said something earlier," he snapped. "You could have told me you were keeping those files. You could have treated people with basic respect," I replied. "We both made choices." He swallowed hard. His eyes flicked to the glass walls around us, as if checking whether anyone was watching him break. A few were, not obviously, but enough. He lowered his voice. "Can you at least tell them not to bury me?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not authority, not confidence, not the man who laughed into a speakerphone. I saw someone standing in the ruins he built himself. "I didn't bury you," I said. "I just stopped letting you bury me." That was my micro-catharsis. Quiet, precise, solid. He stepped back like the words had weight. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now." "That's not my responsibility," I said. It never was. Security noticed him then. They approached gently, professionally. "Sir, you're not permitted on the premises." He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He just nodded, looked at me one last time, and the look wasn't hatred. It was realization, the kind that comes too late. When he left for the final time, no one watched him go. Not out of cruelty, out of closure. The rest of the week moved quietly. Meetings, calls, scheduling. The kind of work that used to feel heavy now felt manageable. Employees gradually stopped flinching at footsteps behind them. People laughed again, genuinely not out of fear. By Friday, the office felt like a different place. On my way out that evening, the CFO stopped me near the elevator. "You did well," he said. "I just told the truth." "No," he replied, holding the door for me. "You kept this department alive. Now it's your turn to build it the way it should be." I didn't smile, but something inside me settled, a kind of peace that didn't need celebration or applause. That night when I got home, I turned on the lights and set my keys on the table. The room didn't feel heavy anymore. The silence wasn't oppressive. It was peaceful. Earned. I made dinner. Simple pasta. Sat down. Ate at my own pace. No buzzing phone. No lists of things to brace myself for tomorrow. Just quiet. A good quiet. The kind you get when the storm finally ends. And for once, it stays ended. Some people think justice is loud, explosive, dramatic. But sometimes justice is simple. The man who humiliated you becomes irrelevant. The voice that mocked you goes silent, and you walk into a room where people finally listen when you speak. That's enough. More than enough. And on Monday, I'll unlock the office with my own key. Not because I wanted his job, because I earned my own peace. And this time, the speakerphone will stay off.